Weeks passed, and I started memorizing Victoria's quiet habits without meaning to. She always left the house before sunrise. She never skipped a meeting. She drank black coffee without sugar and answered every phone call with the same calm voice. One evening, she walked into the dining room and stopped. "You cooked again? I wasn't sure when you'd be home. You didn't have to wait." "I know." She looked at the table. "You should eat while it's hot." "I was waiting for my wife." She sighed. "Don't say things like that." "Why?" "You'll forget this marriage isn't real." "I haven't forgotten." She sat across from me. For several minutes, we ate in silence. Then she quietly asked, "How is your sister?" I looked up in surprise. "You remembered Emily? You talk about her often." "She's doing well. She called today." "What did she say?" "She wants to thank you." "There is no need." "There is." Victoria placed her fork down. "I only honored our agreement." "You changed her future." She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and carried her own plate to the kitchen. "I can wash that," I said. "I know." She washed it anyway. Watching her perform such a simple task made the mansion feel less lonely. Little moments like that became dangerous. Every small kindness made my heart ignore the contract we had signed. One Friday afternoon, she called me. "Wear your black suit." "For what?" "The Sterling Group annual gala." "I have to attend." "You're my husband." "Only on paper." "Tonight, the paper matters." 2 hours later, we arrived together. Camera flashes filled the entrance. Someone shouted, "Mrs. Sterling, look this way." Another reporter asked, "How long have you been married?" Victoria slipped her arm through mine. She smiled politely. "Almost a year." Her fingers barely touched my sleeve, yet my heart raced anyway. Inside the ballroom, executives greeted her one after another. "Ethan." "Yes." "Stay close." I wasn't planning to run away. She gave me a brief glance. "I know." For the first time that evening, I felt like I actually belonged beside her. Then the room suddenly grew quiet. People turned toward the entrance. Someone whispered, "He's back." Another voice said, "I thought he was overseas." I frowned. "Who's everyone talking about?" Victoria didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the man walking through the doors. He was tall, confident, and smiling as though he already owned every room he entered. He stopped a few steps away. "Victoria." Her breathing changed. "Adrian." He laughed softly. "It's been a long time." "It has." He looked at me. "And you must be Ethan." I offered my hand. "Ethan Carter." He shook it firmly. "I've heard a lot about you." "I can't say the same." He smiled wider. "I'm Adrian Hayes." "I know." His attention returned to Victoria. "You look exactly the same." "So do you." Then something happened that I had never seen before. Victoria smiled. Not the polite smile she used for reporters. Not the small smile she almost hid from me over dinner. This one reached her eyes. It was warm. It was effortless. It was real. My chest tightened. I suddenly understood why everyone had gone silent when he arrived. I wasn't standing beside the woman who had slowly become important to me. I was standing between two people whose story had started long before I ever signed that contract. In that painful moment, I finally realized the truth. I had never been her destination. I had only been the place she waited until the man she truly wanted came home. "My name is Ethan Carter." That was the first line I wrote on the marriage contract before signing away 1 year of my life. A year earlier, my father had passed away, leaving behind mountains of debt instead of the peaceful future he always wanted for my younger sister and me. Every bank wanted payment. Every creditor wanted answers. I had talent as an architect, but talent could not erase bills overnight. Then Victoria Sterling appeared. She was the youngest CEO in the city, powerful, beautiful, and impossible to read. She offered me a deal. "I need a husband for 1 year," she said during our first meeting. I stared at her. "A fake marriage?" "A legal one. And after 1 year, we divorce." "That's all. That's all." Her voice never changed. It sounded like she was discussing tomorrow's weather instead of marriage. I looked at the contract again. "I'll pay every debt your family owes," she continued. "Your sister will finish college without worrying about money." "What do you get?" "A husband who asks no personal questions." I laughed quietly. "You think I'm that desperate?" She met my eyes. "I know you are." She was right. 3 days later, I became Victoria Sterling's husband. Not because she loved me, not because I loved her, because both of us needed something. The mansion she owned was bigger than any place I had ever entered. A housekeeper smiled politely. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." I almost corrected her. Instead, I nodded. Victoria walked beside me without looking around. "Your room is upstairs." I blinked. "My room?" "Yes. What about yours?" "The room across the hall." I forced a smile. "So we're married?" "Legally. But we sleep separately. That was always the agreement." I rubbed the back of my neck. "Right." She handed me another document. "Read the rules." I looked down. No entering my room. No discussing private matters. No pretending this marriage is real. No interviews without approval. No emotional attachment. I raised an eyebrow. "You actually wrote that last one?" "I did. What if feelings happen anyway?" "They won't." She answered so quickly that I almost laughed again. Instead, I signed. Days turned into weeks. Our mornings always sounded the same. "I'm leaving. Have a good day." "There's breakfast." "Thank you." Sometimes those are the only words we shared before midnight. She spent every hour running Sterling Group. I spent mine designing buildings for clients who barely remembered my name after meetings ended. At night, I often heard her typing inside her office. One evening I knocked gently. "Come in." She didn't lift her eyes from her laptop. "What is it?" "You skipped dinner." "I'm busy." "You've been busy all day." "I'm aware." I placed a plate beside her keyboard. "You should eat before it gets cold." "I didn't ask for food." "I know." Silence filled the room. Finally, she picked up her fork. "You made this." "I tried." "It's acceptable." I smiled. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me." It wasn't meant as a compliment. Too late. For the smallest second, I thought I saw the corner of her mouth move. Almost a smile. Almost. The next morning, I found an expensive coffee machine waiting in my kitchen. A small note rested beside it. "For your early mornings." No signature. She didn't need one. I touched the paper carefully. "Thank you," I whispered, even though she had already left for work. Maybe she wasn't cold. Maybe she simply didn't know how to show warmth. That tiny hope stayed with me much longer than it should have. The morning after the gala, I found Victoria already dressed for work. "Good morning," I said. "Morning. You left before breakfast yesterday." "I had an early meeting." "You also left before dessert." She picked up her briefcase. "I was busy." I forced a smile. "You've been busy a lot lately." She didn't answer. The front door closed behind her. The silence that followed felt louder than any argument. Over the next 2 weeks, everything changed. Or maybe I was only noticing what had always been there. Every evening, I waited at the dining table. Every evening, my phone buzzed. "I'm working late." "Don't wait." "I already ate." The messages became shorter each day. One night I replied, "Should I keep dinner warm?" She answered no. Nothing else. The next morning, I saw a familiar name on the business news playing in the living room. Adrian Hayes. He stood beside Victoria during a press conference. They looked comfortable together. The reporter smiled. "Mr. Hayes, are you returning to Sterling Group?" "We're discussing several projects." Victoria nodded. "I'm happy to have talented people around me." I switched off the television. Somehow that sentence stayed with me all day. That weekend was supposed to be our contract anniversary. Exactly 1 year since we signed the agreement. The contract required us to attend a charity dinner together. I knew my phone rang. "Ethan, I'm here. I can't make it tonight." I closed my sketchbook. "Why?" "A client meeting. On Saturday?" "It's important." I thought tonight mattered. "It doesn't." Her answer came without hesitation. "I'll explain later." "You don't have to." She stayed quiet. Then the call ended. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because disappointment had become familiar. That evening I drove alone instead of attending the charity event. I ended up outside Emily's apartment. She opened the door and immediately frowned. "Why do you look like you haven't slept in days?" "I've been busy." She folded her arms. "Don't lie to me. I'm serious." "Ethan." "What?" "You always scratch your neck when you're hiding something." I stopped moving my hand. She smiled sadly. I knew it. I walked inside. Emily handed me a cup of tea. "Did you two fight?" "No." "That's worse." I looked into the steaming cup. "We don't fight." "Why not?" "Because fighting means both people care enough to argue." And I don't think Victoria notices when I'm gone. Emily reached across the table. Do you love her? I wanted to deny it. Instead, I whispered, yeah. She sighed. Does she know? I don't think she wants to. Emily squeezed my hand. You deserve someone who waits for you too. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated again. Victoria. I answered immediately. Ethan. Yes. I won't be home tonight. Working again? Yes. Do you need anything? No. The line went quiet. Then I heard laughter. A man's laughter. Adrian's. Victoria spoke again. I have to go. The call ended. Emily looked at my face. She wasn't alone. I slowly shook my head. No. She whispered, I'm sorry. I stared through the apartment window without seeing the lights outside. For the first time since signing that contract, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. If I disappeared tomorrow, would Victoria even notice I was gone? The following Monday, I stopped by Sterling Group to deliver updated building plans. The receptionist smiled. Good morning, Mr. Sterling. Morning. Mrs. Sterling is still in a meeting. I'll wait. A familiar voice called my name. Mr. Sterling? I turned around. A young woman with a neat folder hurried toward me. I'm Grace Bennett, Ms. Sterling's assistant. I've seen you before. She nodded. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. It's not your fault. She hesitated before speaking again. You've been waiting a lot lately. I gave a weak smile. Is it that obvious? Grace looked uncomfortable. I shouldn't say this, but you deserve better. I blinked. What do you mean? I see how hard you try. And she notices more than you think. Then why does nothing change? Grace lowered her eyes. I wish I knew. Before I could ask another question, Victoria stepped out of the conference room with Adrian beside her. She looked surprised. Ethan, I brought the revised plans. You could have emailed them. I thought I'd save time. Adrian smiled politely. Perfect timing. Victoria picked up the folder without opening it. Thank you. I waited. She said nothing else. Adrian checked his watch. We'll be late for lunch. Victoria nodded. Let's go. I looked at her. We had dinner plans tonight. She frowned for a second. Did we? I felt my stomach sink. It's on your calendar. She unlocked her phone. Oh, she barely looked at the screen. I'm sorry. Then she locked it again. I'll cancel. I asked quietly. That easily? I have something more important. Adrian walked toward the elevator. I'll wait downstairs. Victoria answered, I'll be right there. She looked back at me. We'll talk later. No. What? I don't think we will. She stared at me for a moment before following Adrian. Grace remained beside me. I'm sorry. I laughed softly. You apologize more than the person who actually hurts me. Her expression turned sad. You've always been kind to everyone here. I tried. You still do. I thanked her and left the building. That night, I returned home earlier than usual. The mansion was dark except for the lights in Victoria's study. I walked toward the room, planning to tell her how I felt. Before I reached the door, I heard Adrian's voice. You still haven't divorced him. Victoria sighed. I will. Then why wait? Because the contract ends soon. So he never meant anything? I stood completely still. Victoria answered without hesitation. It was only a business arrangement. Adrian laughed. And the year? I regret wasting it pretending. Those words shattered something inside me. I quietly stepped away before either of them noticed. Inside my bedroom, I closed the door without making a sound. I looked at the wedding ring resting on my finger. For months, I had treated it like a promise. Now it felt like a reminder that I had been fooling myself. I slowly pulled it off and placed it on the desk. Then I opened my laptop. A blank document appeared. I typed 3 simple words. Divorce agreement draft. My hands trembled, but I didn't stop. For the first time since becoming Victoria Sterling's contract husband, I wasn't preparing to save our marriage. I was preparing to walk away without telling anyone. I spent the next 3 days finishing the divorce papers. Every signature felt lighter than the one before. On Friday morning, I knocked on Victoria's office door. Come in. She never looked away from the documents covering her desk. I need 5 minutes. I'm busy. It won't take long. She sighed. Fine. I walked closer and placed a thick envelope beside her laptop. What's this? Our divorce agreement. Her pen stopped moving for exactly 1 second. Then she continued writing. You finally finished it. I did. I'll review it later. I waited. She didn't open the envelope. Aren't you going to read it? I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. This is our marriage. It's a contract. Her calm answer hurt less than I expected. Maybe because I had already heard worse. I signed every page. Good. You don't have anything to say? She leaned back. What do you want me to say, Ethan? I don't know. Neither do I. Silence settled between us. Finally, she spoke again. You'll calm down. I'm calm. You'll come back after a few days. I'm not leaving because I'm angry. Then why? Because I'm finished waiting? She frowned slightly. You're overthinking everything. No. I smiled sadly. I finally stopped. She glanced at the envelope. I'll have legal process it. There won't be any arguments from me. I didn't expect any. I nodded once. Goodbye, Victoria. She returned her attention to another file. Close the door on your way out. Those were the last words she spoke before I left her office. Not goodbye. Not take care. Just another instruction. Back in my room, I pulled an old folder from the closet. Inside was an overseas job offer I had received almost 4 months earlier. A prestigious architecture firm in London. I had turned it down because I believed my marriage deserved one more chance. Now I opened my laptop. The email was still there. I typed a short reply. I accept your offer. Thank you for this opportunity. I pressed send before I could change my mind. My phone rang less than an hour later. Mr. Carter? Speaking. This is Daniel Brooks. I straightened immediately. The Daniel Brooks? He laughed. I hope that's a good reaction. It definitely is. I received your email. I wasn't sure the position was still available. I kept it open. I blinked. You did. I like your designs too much to give up. I smiled for the first time in weeks. When do you need me? As soon as possible. I can fly this weekend. Excellent. He paused before speaking again. One more thing. Yes. You're joining us because of your talent. I stayed quiet. He continued. I don't care who your wife is. I'm getting divorced. Then leave the past where it belongs. His words settled deep inside me. No one had spoken to me like that in a very long time. Not as someone's husband. Not as someone's connection. Just as Ethan. After the call ended, I booked the earliest flight available. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for Victoria to make a decision. I had finally made one for myself. As I looked around the room that had never truly felt like home, I realized something surprising. Walking away didn't feel like losing. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for an entire year. The next morning, I packed only one suitcase. Everything else stayed where it was. The expensive watches, the tailored suits, the luxury car keys. None of them belonged to me. I carried the suitcase downstairs and placed it beside the front door. Then I picked up a small box. Inside were every gift Victoria had ever given me. The coffee machine note, a designer pen, a silk tie, a birthday watch. I looked at each item one last time before closing the lid. The housekeeper walked into the hallway. Mr. Sterling? I smiled gently. My name is Ethan. She looked confused. Are you going on a trip? I'm going home. She glanced at the suitcase. Will Mrs. Sterling come later? No. Her expression softened. I'll miss you. I'll miss your cooking. She laughed quietly. I hope you find happiness. I hope so too. Before leaving, I placed the box outside Victoria's study. I set my wedding ring on top. Beside it, I left the mansion key. Finally, I wrote one sentence on a blank card. Thank you for keeping your promise. Now I'll keep mine. I didn't wait for her to read it. The taxi arrived a few minutes later. As the driver loaded my suitcase, my phone vibrated. Victoria. I stared at the screen. It stopped ringing. A second later, another message appeared. Where are you? I read the words twice. Then I locked my phone without replying. At the airport, I checked in and found my gate. Families hugged each other. Friends laughed together. I stood alone. Strangely, I didn't feel lonely anymore. Just before boarding, my phone rang again. Victoria. This time I answered. Ethan. Yes. Where are you? At the airport. She sounded annoyed. Why? I'm leaving. For work. For my future. She went quiet. When are you coming back? I'm not. Stop joking. I'm serious. You'll return after you've calmed down. I already told you. Told me what? I'm not leaving because I'm angry. Then why are you making this difficult? I closed my eyes. Because staying became impossible. She sighed impatiently. We'll discuss this tonight. There won't be a tonight. What does that mean? My flight is boarding. Ethan, I hope your company succeeds. That's not what we're talking about. I hope you stay healthy. Answer my question. I already did. The announcement echoed through the terminal. Final boarding. Victoria spoke again. You have nowhere else to go. I smiled sadly. I finally do. Before she could answer, I ended the call. I never looked back. Hours later, the plane landed beneath a gray London sky. The air felt colder than home, yet every breath seemed lighter. Outside the airport, a man raised a sign with my name. You must be Ethan. I am. He offered his hand. I'm Daniel Brooks. It's an honor to meet you. The honor comes after I see your work. I laughed. Fair enough. He pointed toward the city. Ready for a fresh start? I looked through the windshield at streets I had never seen before. For the first time in years, nobody expected me to be a perfect husband. They only expected me to become a better architect. I smiled and answered without hesitation. I've never been more ready. The past was finally behind me, and this time, I chose not to carry it forward. 6 months passed before I heard Victoria's voice again. I wasn't there. I only imagined the conversation after Grace called me one rainy evening. Ethan, Grace, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not all. Is everything okay? She hesitated. I thought you deserved to know. Know what? She finally noticed. I looked through my office window. Notice what? That you're really gone. I stayed silent. Grace continued softly. She searched every room in the mansion today. For me? Yes. I closed my eyes. I left everything behind. Almost everything. What do you mean? She found a notebook. My heart skipped. The blue sketchbook? Yes. I thought I packed it. You forgot it. I smiled bitterly. What's inside? She opened it. I leaned against my desk. And Grace lowered her voice. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard her whisper. What did she say? She asked. Why didn't he tell me? I laughed quietly. I tried. Grace didn't answer. Instead, she said, every page is drawings. I know. And little notes. I know. They're all about buildings. They were dreams. She took a slow breath. One page says, I hope Victoria smiles when we finish our first project together. I looked at the rain sliding across the glass. I wrote that after our 3rd month. Another page says, maybe one day she'll let me cook dinner without rushing back to work. I rubbed my forehead. I remember. Grace sounded emotional. The last page. What about it? It says, even if she never loves me, I'll still protect her while I can. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I whispered. That was the night before Adrian came back. Grace sighed. She cried. I froze. What? I've never seen her cry before. Are you sure? I was standing outside her office. I slowly sat down. What happened? She kept turning the pages. And she asked me why nobody told her. I smiled sadly. Nobody needed to. Grace answered. She thinks she was blind. I think she chose not to see. The call ended a few minutes later. I returned to my designs, but my mind stayed in that mansion. Not because I wanted to return, because I finally understood something. Love couldn't survive forever inside silence. The next afternoon, my phone rang again. Grace. Ethan. What's wrong? The board held an emergency meeting. What? Mr. Richard Collins discovered missing company funds. I frowned. Missing. Several accounts were changed without approval. Does Victoria know? Now she does. Who did it? No proof yet. But Grace lowered her voice. Everyone suspects Adrian. I remembered his confident smile at the gala. What happened next? Company lawyer Olivia Reed demanded a full investigation. Did Victoria agree? She had no choice. I walked toward the large model sitting in the center of my office. How did Adrian react? He laughed. Laughed. He said Richard was jealous. And Victoria? Grace became quiet. She defended Adrian. I wasn't surprised. Then Grace added one more sentence. But after finding your notebook, she doesn't sound as certain anymore. I looked at the unfinished building in front of me. Months ago, I would have dropped everything and rushed back to help her. Now I simply asked one question. Will she finally see the truth before she loses everything? 3 days later, Grace called again. Ethan, I'm here. You were right. About what? Things are getting worse. I set my pencil down. Tell me, Mr. Richard Collins presented financial records this morning. What did they show? Millions are missing. I stayed quiet. Did Adrian deny it? He smiled. That's never a good sign. It wasn't. Grace took a slow breath. He said every transfer had Victoria's approval. My heart sank. Did she approve them? She signed the documents. Without reading them? That's what Richard believes. I closed my eyes. She always trusted too quickly when emotions were involved. Grace sounded tired. Richard said almost the same thing. What happened next? Olivia Reed stood up. The company lawyer? Yes. What did she say? She told Victoria, trust doesn't replace responsibility. I nodded to myself. Olivia has courage. She does. Grace continued. Then Olivia placed another folder on the table. What was inside? Copies of private payments. To Adrian? Yes. Personal accounts? And companies connected to him. I rubbed my forehead. So the truth is finally coming out. Not completely. What do you mean? Adrian accused Richard and Olivia of working together. Did anyone believe him? Not anymore. I leaned back in my chair. What did Victoria do? Grace became quiet again. She asked everyone to leave except Adrian. I sighed. I hope she asked the right questions. I think she did. Later that evening, my phone buzzed once more. It was another call from Grace. She searched your old room. I looked toward the window. Why? She said she wanted answers. Did she find anything? Only memories. I smiled sadly. There weren't many things left. There was one. What? A small photo. I remembered it immediately. The picture from the lake. Yes. She kept it. She held it for almost an hour. I didn't know what to say. Grace whispered. She kept asking the same question. What was it? Why didn't I notice how lonely he was? I answered quietly, because I never wanted her to feel guilty. Grace sighed. I think she already does. The next morning, Daniel walked into my office. You look distracted. I got news from home. Bad. Complicated. He folded his arms. Are you thinking about going back? I looked at the unfinished blueprint between us. No. Why not? Because my life is here now. He smiled. Good. I can't fix every mistake someone else made. You finally learned. I did. He nodded proudly. Then keep building. I will. After work, I stood outside our office and watched people hurrying through the streets. Months earlier, I would have run back the moment Victoria needed me. Now I understood something different. Saving someone who refuses to see the truth only destroys the person trying to help. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. For the first time, I didn't wonder whether Victoria missed me. Instead, I wondered whether she could survive the consequences of believing the wrong man for far too long. Whatever happened next would no longer be my battle. I had already fought mine. And this time, I refused to lose myself again. 3 years passed faster than I ever expected. The lonely man who had left home with one suitcase slowly disappeared. In his place stood an architect whose designs appeared in magazines, business journals, and television interviews. One morning, Daniel knocked on my office door. Ethan, come in. He held up a gold envelope. You finally received it. I smiled. The conference invitation and something better. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal letter. Congratulations. You have been selected to receive the International Excellence in Architecture Award. I looked at Daniel. Is this real? He laughed. You earned it. I read the letter again. I wish my father could see this. He already would have been proud. I nodded quietly. When is the ceremony? Friday. Then we'd better finish this project first. Daniel grinned. That's the Ethan I know. Friday arrived before I realized it. The conference hall buzzed with conversations from architects, investors, and business leaders from around the world. I adjusted my tie. Daniel smiled. Nervous? A little. You've spoken before. Not in front of this many people. You'll be fine. A staff member approached us. Mr. Carter? Yes. We're ready for you backstage. I'll be there. Daniel patted my shoulder. Go make us proud. I walked toward the stage entrance. The host's voice echoed through the hall. Our next award recognizes outstanding innovation, leadership, and creativity. My heartbeat grew faster. Please welcome Mr. Ethan Carter. Applause filled the room. I stepped onto the stage. Bright lights shined across the audience. I accepted the trophy with both hands. Thank you. The applause continued. I looked across the crowd while preparing my speech. Then I stopped breathing for a moment. Victoria stood near the back of the room. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't applauding. She simply stared at me as though she couldn't believe I was real. I forced myself to continue. This award belongs to everyone who believed in my work. I glanced toward Daniel. My mentor reminded me that talent matters more than titles. Daniel smiled proudly. I continued. I also learned that painful endings sometimes become beautiful beginnings. The audience applauded again. Only one pair of eyes never left me. After the ceremony ended, dozens of people surrounded me. Congratulations. Excellent speech. Your latest project inspired our team. I thanked each person before finally escaping into a quieter hallway. I had barely taken 2 steps when I heard a familiar voice. Ethan. I turned around slowly. Victoria stood several feet away. She looked different, not weaker, just tired. Her confident expression had disappeared. She held her hands together nervously. I've been looking for you. I can see that. She lowered her eyes. You've changed. So have you. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, Can we talk? I looked at the exit, then back at her. I have a few minutes. Relief crossed her face. Thank you. We walked toward a quiet lounge overlooking the city lights. Neither of us spoke until the door closed behind us. She looked at the award in my hands before meeting my eyes again. I always knew you were talented. I smiled politely. I wish you had told me that years ago. Her eyes filled with regret, and for the first time since our divorce, I realized the woman standing before me had come here carrying far more than an apology. Victoria looked at me for several seconds before speaking. I don't know where to begin. You can begin with the truth. She nodded slowly. I owe you that. I placed my award on the table between us. I'm listening. She took a deep breath. After you left, I convinced myself you would come back. I know. I thought you were trying to prove a point. You never believed I could leave. No. She closed her eyes. I believed you needed me. I did. She looked surprised. But not for the reasons you imagined. She waited quietly. I needed respect. I know. I needed honesty. I know. I needed someone who saw me instead of using me. Tears gathered in her eyes. I failed you. I answered calmly. You did. She lowered her head. I kept choosing Adrian. You did. I ignored everyone. You did. I even ignored myself. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Finally, she whispered, Richard and Olivia were right. What happened? Adrian stole company money. I heard. He forged documents. I nodded. He blamed innocent people. I'm not surprised. Victoria looked at the floor. I defended him until the evidence became impossible to deny. And then, he disappeared. With the money? Yes. She laughed bitterly. I lost the company my father built. I'm sorry. She looked at me in disbelief. You're sorry? I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. She wiped away a tear. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not. I deserve your anger. I shook my head. I don't carry it anymore. She stared at me. Ow! I stopped living in the past. She smiled sadly. I spent years trapped there. I stood and walked toward the window. The past taught me something valuable. What? I survived it. She joined me. I found your notebook. I know. I read every page. I guessed. I didn't understand how much you loved me. You weren't ready to. She whispered, I'm ready now. I smiled gently. I believe you. Hope appeared in her eyes. Then, can we start again? I looked at the city below. Cars moved through the streets without stopping. Lives kept moving forward. Slowly, I turned back toward her. I forgave you a long time ago. She took one careful step closer. Does that mean? No. Her hopeful expression faded. I don't understand. I forgave you because I wanted peace. She stayed silent. But forgiveness isn't the same as going back. A tear rolled down her cheek. I would do everything differently. I know. I'd choose you. I believe that too. Then why? I smiled with quiet sadness. Because some doors never open twice. She covered her mouth. I was too late. Yes. I hate myself for that. Don't. She looked confused. The person you should become tomorrow matters more than the person you were yesterday. She cried openly. You still care. I care enough to want you to heal. but not enough to love me again. I answered honestly. The man who waited every night at the dinner table doesn't exist anymore. She closed her eyes. I lost him. You did. I picked up my award. Thank you. She looked up. For what? For breaking my heart. She froze. I continued quietly. Without that pain, I would never have discovered the life waiting for me. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Victoria whispered my name one last time. I didn't stop. Some goodbyes deserve tears. Others deserve peace. Mine deserved both. As I stepped into the hallway, I realized I wasn't walking away from Victoria anymore. I was walking toward the future I had finally earned. 1 year passed after the conference. Life kept moving, and so did I. Daniel walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Ready for today? I accepted one with a smile. Our biggest meeting yet. He nodded. I still remember the day you arrived with 1 suitcase. I remember thinking I made the hardest decision of my life. And now, I'd make it again. He laughed. I knew you'd say that. The receptionist knocked gently. Mr. Carter, come in. The investors have arrived. I'll be there in a minute. Daniel looked around our office. Not bad for 2 architects who started with borrowed desks. I smiled proudly. Our own company. Our own name. Our own future. We walked into the conference room together. After 2 hours of presentations, the investors stood and shook our hands. Congratulations. We're excited to work with your firm. Your vision impressed everyone. I thanked them one by one. When a room finally emptied, Daniel grinned. We did it. No. I looked around the office. We earned it. That evening my phone rang. Emily. Big brother. I laughed immediately. You sound excited. I just watched your interview. Oh no. It was amazing. I stumbled over 2 answers. Nobody noticed. I leaned back in my chair. How are you? I'm proud. You always say that. Because it's always true. Her voice softened. I still remember visiting you in that huge mansion. So do I. You barely smiled back then. I know. You always looked tired. I stayed quiet. She continued gently. You kept waiting for someone who never came. I did. But look at you now. I smiled. What do you see? I see my brother again. Those words meant more than any business award. A week later, Emily visited my office. She walked slowly through the lobby, looking around with wide eyes. This place is beautiful. I'm glad you like it. She laughed. I don't like it. You don't. I love it. I showed her my design studio. She touched one of the building models carefully. You built all this? With an incredible team. And Daniel. She looked at an old framed sketch hanging near my desk. I remember this drawing. The first building I ever designed. You almost threw it away. Almost threw away a lot of things. She smiled knowingly. But not your dream. No. We stood quietly for a moment. Then she asked, do you ever miss her? I thought carefully before answering. I miss the person I hoped she could become. And the real one? I wish her peace. Emily nodded. That's enough. Before leaving, she hugged me tightly. I'm happy. So, am I? After she left, I sat alone in my office. The silence felt different now. Years earlier, silence had reminded me of loneliness. Now it reminded me of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't measuring my happiness by someone else's attention. I was measuring it by the life I had built with my own hands. That realization felt more valuable than every award hanging on my office wall. Then my assistant knocked softly on the door. Mr. Carter? Yes. A letter arrived for you. I looked at the unfamiliar handwriting on the envelope. Without opening it, I already knew who had sent it. I closed my office door before opening the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. I recognized Victoria's handwriting immediately. My hand stayed steady as I unfolded the paper. It began simply, Dear Ethan. I read the first line aloud. I'm sorry. The next sentence made me pause. You once gave me a love I never understood until it was gone. I continued reading. I spent the last year rebuilding my company one honest decision at a time. Richard and Olivia stayed beside me when they had every reason to leave. Grace reminded me every day that respect must be earned, not expected. I finally learned to thank people instead of ordering them. I finally learned to listen instead of assuming I already knew every answer. ****. I smiled quietly. She had changed. The letter continued. Adrian never returned. The money is gone forever, but I no longer measure success by numbers. I measure it by the trust one protect. That lesson came from you. Asterisk, asterisk. I reached the final page. You once thanked me for breaking your heart because it helped you become stronger. I never thanked you for loving someone who didn't deserve it. Thank you for teaching me what love really means. I learned too late, but I promise I will never forget it. I hope your future is brighter than anything I ever imagined for us. Goodbye, Ethan. Asterisk, asterisk. I folded the letter carefully. There were no tears, only gratitude. Daniel knocked gently. Can I come in? Of course. He stepped inside. You look thoughtful. I just finished reading something important. Good news. Peace. He smiled. That's better than good news. I nodded. It really is. He noticed the folded letter. Are you keeping it? Yes. Why? Because it reminds me how far I've come. He looked at me for a moment. I remember meeting a man who believed his life had ended. I remember him too. What would you tell that man now? I smiled. I'd tell him to keep walking. Daniel laughed softly. Simple. True. After he left, I opened my desk drawer. Inside were old project sketches, family photos, and my father's watch. I placed Victoria's letter beside them. Then I closed the drawer. Some memories deserved a place. They just didn't deserve to guide my future. I walked toward the large windows overlooking the city. The streets below were full of people chasing dreams, making mistakes, falling, rising, and trying again. I understood them better now. Life had never been about finding someone to complete me. It had always been about becoming someone I could respect when I looked in the mirror. Victoria had found regret. Adrian had found the consequences of his choices. I had found myself. That was enough. I picked up my briefcase and turned off the office lights. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new buildings, and new dreams. I welcomed all of them. As I stepped outside, the evening breeze carried away the last weight I had been holding. I never needed revenge. I never needed anyone to lose so I could win. My greatest victory was choosing myself, protecting my peace, and building a life filled with purpose instead of regret. Without looking back, I smiled, locked the office door, and walked confidently toward the future that had been waiting for me all along. The end of my marriage had never been the end of my story. It had been the beginning of a life I was always meant to live.